Hello, once again welcome back to the cellar. Anyone got one of the older Hornby J52s? Ever thought about sticking a DCC decoder in it? Yeah, I thought about that. Let's see how we got on. This is Leopard Street. This is the victim I'm going to be using for today. This is a little Hornby J52 acquired on eBay secondhand. It runs quite nicely on DC. I think I want to stick a DCC chip in it. And as previously, due to slight issues with some of the cameras, this one's going to be a mix of video and stills. Lovely little loco, acquired quite cheaply. Yeah, let's have a look. This is what I'm going to be fitting as the Zemo MX600. This is the R version with the 8-pin plug on the end, although I'll be cutting that off. Pretty much standardised on these now. So these are 4-function decoders, although I'm not going to be using any of the functions here, or the function outputs. Railcom enabled, not using that just yet either. ABC brake support, which I do want to use. Shunt functioning, half speed, and yeah, pretty decent price actually for the thing, and it's quite small, so hopefully this will fit. Yeah, here we are on the workbench. So here's the little locomotive and some of the tooling. Yeah, lovely little loco here, especially to say it was remarkably cheap. Shiny bits on the bottom, a couple of RFID tags. That's a story for another day. And here we have the decoder. So yeah, I'll take this out. They're not very big. Perfectly suitable for small 00 gauge locomotives. Probably a bit big frame gauge, but don't really need them for that. So we're going to cut that lead off, cut them a bit short, but I want to get into the loco first. So that is basically the first job, is how to get into one of these. And these particular ones are actually quite straightforward. There is a clip on the back that you basically just push in and the body unclips. The bodywork will dismantle further than I'm going to be doing here. All I need to do at the moment really is take the lid off. I am going to do some more paint work on this, but that is for another day. So yeah, just have a quick little look, and here is the clip on the back, and basically it's just a case of push that in, prise that round. So here we go, and then the bodywork just comes off. This is probably one of the easiest to dismantle locomotives I've got. I think it's wonderful. So quite good design. So here we are with a chassis. So yeah, bodywork. There's a metal weight in the front here, which is in some ways a bit annoying, because that's where I'd rather prefer to put the decoder. I do need to check that's actually going to fit, which is probably one of the next things to do here. I'm wanting it to sit about on top of the motor. In the end, it's actually going to, I think, goes the other way around, but that'll work. Just a case of try a bit of fitting on the body. A little bit awkward trying to trap the wires. I want to make sure there's enough space on top of the motor. All this faffing about. It turns out, yes, there is enough space in here. This spoiler alert, this does go in and this does work. So yeah, so that's about where it's going to go. It'll fit over there. Awkward to do without trapping the wire at the moment, which is slightly awkward. I was hoping this part would fit a little bit more easily. But yeah, so that's going to go into there. Now, prior to making this video, I have actually had the bodywork off this loco before. I haven't actually dismantled it fully, however. So yeah, next up is taking the motor out and examining exactly how that's powered in. There's a little set of brass contacts on the top, which take the feed, I think, from the right-hand side. There's the right-hand side feed, goes through the little suppressor circuit. Left-hand side is the other bit. So there is a spring clip which goes onto one of the motor terminals at the top, and it is just a spring fit. It's not soldered, which makes life nice and simple. There is a single screw which holds the motor block in place and also holds the other feed on. So there we are. So the motor comes off, brings out the right hand side feed rails itself. Left hand side is just a simple metal strip which goes in there, and that connects to the other motor contact at the bottom, which yeah, and that is basically it. So that strip at the top needs to come off. The strip at the bottom needs cutting a little bit. Also need to check continuity on this here to make sure I'm not going to short the whole thing out when I put it back together. And yeah, So what we mean by continuity here, I want to make sure the two motor terminals are electrically isolated from the rest of it. Normally they would be, some models you have the chassis will connect directly to one of the terminals, which is a little bit annoying because it needs to be isolated. So all I'm really checking here is the metal bodywork of the motor connected to either of the terminals. So obviously the spring feed there is, and the spring feed on the bottom is directly connected to the chassis. So when I'm connecting this up, I obviously need to make sure that none of the power wires touch the motor terminal rails. So got to get rid of this thing off the top. Normally when I'm dismantling one of these, I'm actually quite loath to start cutting at anything. I like to keep the pieces, so if it all goes horribly wrong, I can put the thing back together again. There's the suppressing circuit coming off. That's just a little screw fit. And then in the end, I'm not actually cutting it. I'm just using this to grip. This top piece just slides out. The bottom one you've got to be a little bit more careful with, because it retains the feeds. But there we have the two little wires. The feed is soldered on one side, which needs removing, and then we can get on the next stage. So that has to come off. This here needs clipping down. Don't want to cut the wires too short at the moment, but it's useful to have just a little bit left on the plug in case you want to use the plug for something else later. So there we go, and as you see, very careful measurement there. That was just estimated. All different wires do different things on one of these decoders. Yeah, on this specific decoder, this is what we've got here. We've got black and red wires, which go to the left and the right hand rails in the direction of travel. The grey and orange wires, which go to the motor. The grey wire connecting to the left-hand motor, the left-hand rail feed, and the orange wire connecting to the right-hand rail feed. Normally, worth making a note of which feed goes to which side. You can reverse it later in a decoder setting, but it's easier to get it right in the first place. We've then got a blue wire, which is a positive output feed for driving functions. Yellow and white, which drive the front and rear lights, and the green and wire, which goes into the plug, drives the first function, and the brown wire, which doesn't even go near the plug, drives the second function. Obviously the front and rear lights being the two other functions if you want to use them for anything else. Not using any of those here, so they're just going to get taped up out of the way. Yeah, so there's the four coloured wires I'm going to use. The others are just going to get wrapped around. I'm going to put some Captain tape over those, which is nice high temperature insulation tape, and basically that'll keep them out of the way. So we'll get on with that shortly. And the next step is to take the existing soldered wire off. Now this is, I've switched to a finer tip soldering iron than I usually do, which is good in some ways and is bad in others. Hence why I'm actually putting a bit of solder onto the thing. I'm going to be soldering another wire to this, so I do want to leave the copper contact, brass contact, whichever it is, tinned, but I need to heat this up enough to remove the ancient solder off here. And as always, the problem is you need three hands to do this. It's sort of holding the motor in place, holding the soldering iron, and pulling on the wire. And in the end, it comes off. This is just a little bit of a pain, but you can watch me clowning around doing it. Yeah, while tinning this, it's a case of a little bit of that. A little bit of solder flux on there helps with the tinning, and I'm going to go and put a little bit of IPA onto the contacts at either end and just basically clean the rail pickups while I'm doing this. Yeah, sort of thinking while I've got the thing in pieces, I may as well do at least a little bit of basic servicing work on it at the same time. So this is going to clean up the right-hand feeds, which are the ones attached to the motor. There's a little insulating piece on there. And we come back to the chassis to look at the left-hand feed. Now this is another strip. I didn't realise it at first, but this is actually going to spring straight out into my hand, which is rather useful. Again, I'm just trying to clean the contact points off. And there we are. See, it just comes out, which actually is quite useful because it makes working on it a lot easier. So I clean the other end up. That's also going to get a little bit of tinning applied to it. So again, it's just a little bit of IPA in a squeezy bottle. Actually use my 3D printer most of the time. This is what I use for cleaning the print bed with. So just carry on, give this a good clean. You can see some of the dirt coming off this. The whole loco does actually need a lot better cleaning. Now that sits back into its place. And as I said earlier, this is a little spring clip. This comes up at one end and touches onto one of the motor contacts. Now obviously I don't want it to do that. The motor contact itself is isolated from the chassis apart from via this. So what I'm actually going to do is just clip the end off. I was originally thinking about putting a little bit of heat shrink over this to sort of protect it for future generations, but in the end I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to clip that end. That'll make life simpler. Don't need to worry about anything else, so just clip a little bit of that off. Can't clip too much off because this is actually held in place by the motor clamping it down against the chassis. So I need that, although I'm not using its continuity with the chassis. I'm actually going to solder the wire directly to this other feed. So that's going to go in. That'll be nicely clear. So that now needs tinning up as well, so I can stick another wire onto it. The next job is to go back to the motor, and now what I'm going to do is start soldering the decoder to this. So I'm going to start off here by soldering the orange and grey wires to the two motor terminals. So we're going to start off with the orange wire, I think it is to the top. Is that a green? No, so the grey wire, sorry, to the bottom is the first one we do here. A little bit of solder flux, basically just helps the solder flow around the joins. The goal here is then just tin the wire. The real pain at this point was actually getting it to stay in place. It's a really fine wire. The motor tab has a very small hole through it, so basically I thread a little bit of the wire through the hole, try and get it all to stay in place long enough for me to touch that with a soldering iron and get it to make contact. It's not the easiest of jobs, but it's just a little bit fiddly rather than being like particularly what you might call a skilled job. So we'll get that done and then we'll get on with the other wire. At the end of all this messing about, this is what I'm left with. So this is the motor sitting upside down at the moment. Here is the grey wire that fits into the top through the very little hole. This is the lower motor terminal, which is the left-hand rail as it goes in. The right rail pickups there, and you can see a little bit of insulation on the side of it. This is where we solder it. And once that wire's in, it's basically turn the motor over and repeat the process with the orange wire. This one now being significantly more fiddly to line up. This one's slightly more recessed into the motor housing, and I've now also got the problem with the grey wire touching on it. But we solder with that and we persevere, and eventually that goes in. And obviously, like a complete muppet, I'm holding this up nicely to where the camera can't see it. But yeah, sorry about that, I will get a little bit better. Next up, we need to come back to the chassis. I just need to try and make sure this thing fits in, get the feeds back in the right place. So I think it does come back into focus shortly. Alright, here we are with the motor back in place. What we now need to do is solder the feeds on. The one stuck to the side of the motor is probably the easiest one to do first, so here we are stripping that away, and that's going to get soldered onto there. Now this, obviously, I've got a little bit of tinning on there already, so this just goes on relatively straightforwardly. And in the end, this is what this one looks like with a slightly nicer close-up here. So you can see the wire soldered on there. You can see the orange wire coming off the top of the motor. So let's do the other side. Again, soldering the other side on, relatively straightforward, just a little bit fiddly because the wires aren't particularly long. It's always the problem with this, you don't want the wires too long because you've then got to find somewhere to put the wires, but if they're too short, it becomes a real pain in the neck to get at. So this is why we just basically repeat the process here. And again, there's a little bit of faffing about here, tinning of wires and just general messing around. You can also see the yellow Kapton tape around the side of the decoder. This basically just wraps up the unused wires, keeps them nicely out of the way and nicely insulated. So then we get this onto here. This is nicely soldered on. And this is what the thing looks like at the end of the soldering. So here you can see the black pickup is on this. The grey motor wire. It doesn't actually come out the back of the motor. There was a little bit of a gap, so I brought it out through that. Basically, I don't want to trap the wire against the chassis block, where vibration over time will probably wear through, short-circuited, and everything will go bang. And that's basically the decoder fitted. There's a couple of steps that follow this. I mean, the very first one is just sticking this on a power track, set to programming, and just see whether it actually works or not, see whether it picks it up. And then we put the body back on, can program it, and then get on with some testing. So I will see you in a minute. Here we are sitting on the Leopard Street programming siding. Flick the various little switches that will turn this into programming mode. I've got JMRI Decoder Pro set up for running this. So we shall set up, and as you can see, the motor is trying to turn, which is good. That sort of suggests it's there. It's just a little bit stiff. Bearing in mind this has been taken apart and needs a little bit of TLC to make it actually run properly. But that showed me that it is actually working. It's talking to the decoder system. So it's all well and good. I just need to shunt this backwards and forwards a little bit. Again, let's see the motor starting to go, and it moves in a minute. So here we go, and off we run. Here we go. Yep, starting to speed up a little bit. Turning at this point, the system's quite stiff. I did actually put a bit of grease back on this thing before I put the bodywork back on. But runs all right in both directions. Yeah, just needs a little bit of a thing. Obviously, the wheels are a little bit dirty. I could do with a few more pickups. Could do with a little bit of cleaning. But this is good enough. This sort of shows here. Here we go. This shows the thing does at least work. So it just needs a little bit of lubrication. And the bodywork putting back on, and then I can do some proper running testing. And here we are on the little test siding. So it's shunting backwards and forth a little bit. Basically just sorting this out. This is after the motors had a little bit of grease added to the gear wheels. So as we're rolling around, just gently going backwards and forwards a few times at different speeds. Really just testing how it responds here, a little bit quicker. Checking the acceleration and braking functions are working. And really just sort of seeing how responsive this is. Trying to get it to run a little bit better before I put it out on the main track, just because this way I don't have to constantly keep pushing it. So there we go, racing off like that. Obviously, this being one of the little Hornby 060s, this is a little pocket rocket, so I need to do a little bit of thing. Back to the layout. And we're going to finish off the video today just with a little bit of running on the track. Put a couple of the Bachmann Barnsley main wagons behind, just as a little bit of a train. And we're shuttling around quite nicely here. I mean, this up onto the rear incline tracks where this splits. Basically just a little bit of run backwards and forwards just to see how this works. I see the little slow down and stop. Control on DCC with small locos like this. I mean, especially this one that really only picks up from the front and rear axles. The middle one's traction tired, so it may get a little bit off the flange, but probably not much. DCC really helps with this. Overall, I am very happy with this one. This is now the fit little chipped loco. Hope you enjoyed seeing how to fit one of these. This is one of the easier ones I've had to do that's involved a soldering iron. There are some slightly more complicated ones coming up. But here we go. We're just going to run backwards past Leopard Junction box, which is back in its place. And that's it for this video. So we'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. Likes, upticks, comments, etc. gratefully received. And yeah, to all those who've subscribed, thank you very much. And I will see you in the next video, hopefully next Friday.